can invest correctly at scale. So I think just the relationship building, really looking into these programs, understanding where you could be fit in and be additive. We use a manager-managers program for our CIF programs, so to building relationships with those managers that we work with, depending on asset class, so that ultimately we can help develop over time, which benefits smaller growing managers as well as fund performance.
Thank you all for finance. Yeah, we've got a very busy schedule. So thank you for coming to the round of applause.
My property got stolen by these guys.
Let us please thank the panel again for this great conversation. Please do not rush to the front. Again, please do not rush to the front. We have another conversation coming. Thank you. Please take your seats. We have the guards coming. Please take your seats. 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 The program has to continue. Please take your seats. The program has to continue. Please take your seats. Please take your seats as we have remarks coming at this time. Everyone, please take your seats. Please welcome to bring remarks Alfonso David, President and CEO of Global Black Economic Forum. Let's take him ahead.
Hello, everyone. It is an honor to be with all of you. First, I want to thank the National Action Network for this invitation, and to the Reverend Al Sharpton, thank you for your voice, your courage, and your consistency over the past several decades. Now, we don't take for granted what it means to have leadership that actually shows up, leadership that actually speaks out, leadership that stays in the fight. So, Reverend Sharpton, thank you for that. And also, congratulations to the new House of Justice headquarters in Harlem. This is not just a building, it's really an infrastructure for our movement. As you heard, my name is Alfonso David. I am a civil rights attorney. I'm also the president and the CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum. And at the forum, we are focused on advancing economic opportunity across 4 key areas: the future of work, the future of wealth, the future of health, and the future of our democracy. We are preparing for one of the most significant and, in fact, the largest convening at this year's Essence Festival of Culture. So if all of you are coming, we look forward to hosting you. We will be talking and engaging with leaders and entrepreneurs and advocates, focusing on how do we move from conversation to action. Now, for today, I want to begin with a truth that I shared on this very stage last year. I came last year and I warned all of you that we were entering into a period of targeted attacks on Black businesses, particularly in public contracting. I said that what we were witnessing was not episodic, it was in fact coordinated, it was strategic, and it was rooted in a broader effort to reshape who has access to economic power and who does not. And last year, we announced that the Global Black Economic Forum had a report on diverse businesses and contracting because we understood what was at stake. Unfortunately, the warning has become real. The president issued an executive order about a week and a half ago targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion in federal contracting. And I want to be clear and grounded in what this means, not just for the business leaders that are out there, but what it means for all of us. Let me just be precise. The executive order does not explicitly bar Black and brown businesses from participating in federal contracting. What it does, it introduces ambiguity. And what it does so by increasing risk or the perception of risk for businesses to work with Black businesses. It requires companies to certify that they are not engaging in what the administration calls racially discriminatory DEI practices. Now, nobody knows what that really means. It's not defined in the executive order. What the goal is to scare people from working with us, to scare people from hiring Black businesses, to scare people from working with brown businesses. So what happens? Companies could actually pull back. They could stop negotiating with Black and brown businesses. They could try to cancel contracts. This is not because the law has changed. The law hasn't changed. This is not because Black and brown businesses are not qualified. They're more than qualified. This is because the administration wants to create uncertainty. And when you create uncertainty, you create fear. And then fear drives behavior. That is the movie that they're playing. Just so we're all clear on what we're watching. And when behavior shifts, opportunity shifts. So just make this real. Federal contracting is about how much you make. How much money do you think the federal government spends every year? Okay, so we're in the right ballpark, billions. $770 billion every year. $770 billion. And approximately 46 of the 770 billion, 46 of that flows through minority businesses. So sit with that for a minute. We have $770 billion that the federal government is spending. $46 billion goes to Black and brown businesses. And this executive order is looking to remove that, to take away the $46 billion that are going to Black and brown businesses. And again, this is not because the law has changed. This is not because Congress has passed a new resolution. This is because the administration wants to signal to other businesses not to work with us. Now, let's think about who's affected. The contractor who employs people in our very communities. It's the small business that is finally scaling. It's the entrepreneur who has navigated barrier after barrier after barrier, and they're winning. And now they can start losing. And when contracts are pulled back, jobs are lost. When jobs are lost, communities are destabilized. When communities are destabilized, we will all feel it. So when we talk about federal contracting, I want to make sure that we understand this is about us. Even if you don't have a business, this is about all of us. This is a part of a broader pattern. We're seeing lawsuits against institutions that support diversity. We're seeing efforts to redefine inclusion as exclusion. We're seeing opportunities to sort of redefine equity as discrimination, and at the same time, we're seeing public contracting under risk. So some of you may not know this, but I took on a recent lawsuit. In Texas, there's a program called the Historically Underutilized Business Program. It's called a HUB program. It has been in existence for more than 35 years. And in Texas, what they did was to create a program. We have a similar program here in New York. Create a program to create opportunities for people of color and for women, because for decades they have been excluded from contracting opportunities. Well, guess what happened? The controller in Texas decided to issue a regulation and remove businesses that are owned by women and businesses that are owned by people of color from the program. So every single business that is owned by a woman, every single business that is owned by a person of color, he sought to remove them from the program. More than 16,000 businesses are there. 16,000. So what are we going to do? We're not going to sit back. We sued them. We're not going to allow this to happen. We have fought too long and too hard to make sure that Black and brown businesses have a seat at the table. So we have filed a landmark lawsuit in Texas against the controller and against 5 other state agencies for violating the law. Because remember, the controller is not a part of the legislature. The controller can't just simply rewrite the law. You have to go back to the legislature. And in Texas, the legislature rejected any attempts to change the law. So we are now suing the controller and all of the agencies that are violating the law. Now, lawsuits are part of our response, but advocacy is also a part of our response, and that's where all of you come in. We have to be disciplined about how we use our economic power, and I'm going to ask you to do 2 things. We cannot separate our values from our spending. You have values. All of you in this room have values. Don't separate it from your pocketbook. If a company does not respect our communities, we should not support that company. If a business chooses to retreat from equity, we should reevaluate that company. If a business chooses to retreat from equity, redefine it. They're not quite sure what it is. We can say we're not quite sure if we want to spend our money with you. And markets respond to incentives. And we have the ability to shape those incentives. So that's the first thing I ask you to continue doing. Make sure that your values are aligned with your behavior. The second is I hope that we will continue to show up. Show up for each other. Show up for the business owner. Show up for the bodega. Show up for the local business. When you need a plumber, when you need dry cleaners, think about who you're going to. Think about where you're spending your business and make sure we're showing up for each other. I want to close by saying this. The president has issued a lot of executive orders. And what you will often not hear in the press, executive orders are not laws. The president cannot issue a law. Only Congress and the legislature can pass the law. Now, the president can issue executive orders anytime he wants, but those executive orders have to comply with statutes and they have to comply with the Constitution. That is why you're seeing all of these lawsuits. So remember, every time you hear in the press, oh, the president has issued an executive order, your first thought should be, well, that's nice, but the executive order doesn't change the law. This moment is not about confusion, it's about control. And it's about who has access to opportunity and who does not. So as we think about the next steps, as we think about showing up for our communities, as we think about making sure we're separating the noise from the facts, understand that change will not wait for us to be comfortable. It requires us to be clear, to be resilient, and to be purposeful. And to think about this moment, please remember that leadership is not simply about managing a transition. It's about inspiring. We are supposed to be inspiring the transition that we want to see. It's about positioning ourselves in alignment with our values. Once again, that word, our values, that will outlast the noise of this moment. It's about recognizing our collective strength, our networks, our voices, and our commitment. And we can make sure we are redefining what justice and opportunity looks like for generations yet to come. Now, you all know this. Let's remember that no weapon formed against us will prosper. Now, let's act like it.
Hello, hello. So family, Nan family, I am here to introduce us today because we all need to know when there are champions out there fighting for us. And so the man that is about to speak is indeed that human. He has been out there advocating for equity for us in finance and creating a playing field so that we can have more opportunity and inclusion in the financial sector. Jacob Walltower is the CEO of Blueprints Capital. And so we are going to hear from him next, and I want us to give him a huge Nan resounding applause and welcome.
You're my sister, and she's one of those people I can reach at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning when I need advice. And there's nobody better than me than Rachel Norton. Let me first say thank you to Reverend Sharpton, National Action Network, and to all of you. It's truly an honor for me to be here on the stage. And when I say it's an honor, it means that I have to get a little bit personal, because the zip code that I was born in, the family that I was born into, never would have dictated that I would be on the stage. I was born to Barbara and Jacob Walltower. Barbara had an 11th grade education, and Jacob had a 7th grade education. And they met each other, they fell in love, married, had 3 wonderful children, put them all through college through their hard work. Ultimately, one day, decided to start their own business. It became hugely successful. They expanded from restaurants into real estate, and I had the privilege of one day looking down a sheet and seeing the name Walltower on a street sign. And so, I want to make sure that this moment is very clear, because I dedicate that to them. And but for their guidance and the grace of God, I simply wouldn't be here. One of the things that my parents taught me and my siblings very, very early on is that it's not about you, right? It's always about something bigger than you. And so when they became successful financially and began to really experience what we call in business today profits, they reinforced that lesson. And those profits were not just for our family, they were for the community. And so they supported the local basketball teams, and they supported the local Little League teams. They supported the churches. They provided for people's families when they lost loved ones. They believe that when you're successful, you have a responsibility to recycle those profits back into your community. And make no mistake about it, when you hear Alfonso talk about us as people of color being isolated from economic opportunities, that is the goal. Because when we have money, we're dangerous, right? There's so much that we can do for each other. We now no longer have to rely on other people. I received a phone call a couple of days ago, and Reverend Sharpton has been on my mind and on my heart, principally because the passing of Reverend Jackson. And the passing of Reverend Jackson meant that a man who wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning to work out
and who was tireless in his efforts to support us, now had even more weight to carry on his back. And on behalf of my family, I said to myself, how can we be supportive? I went from that boy in a small town in a house where we had a gas oven. And we woke up in the morning and we all hovered around the gas oven because that's where the heat was, right? And then we went off to school. Well, life got a little better since then because of my education, because of the support that my parents gave me, but also because of the work that Reverend Jackson and Reverend Sharpton had done over the years to clear a path. So on behalf of my family, both my family that gave birth to me and my family that I work with each and every day at Blueprint Capital Advisors, I want to announce today, because we all know that the House of Justice is looking at building a new home, that we're going to up our commitment to that House of Justice to $100,000. I want to thank you for all the work that you do for all of us. And on behalf of my parents, I just want to say thank you all for the honor to be here.
Some of you forget where you come from and forget how you got there. And act like you got there because you were qualified or that you had a good resume. But some of us had to pay a price for your resume to even be raised. Some of us had to take nights in jail and licks upside the head or shut out of courtrooms like Byron so you could walk down the red carpets and act like you got there by yourself. So I received this award with a special place in my heart and on my shelf because I'm getting it from a freedom fighter who never forgot where he came from and how he got there. Yes, we've come a long way. We have now a black president and now a black vice president. But we still can get shot down and have to march to get a case in court. We still can get shut out of boardrooms. We're still doubly unemployed in the big economy. So we will have to keep marching. And I thank not only my family, my mother that raised me by herself, but I thank that lady at the end of the march, and know she won't be on TV that night, and know her name will never be in the paper, but she believed in me enough to get at the end of the line and make me look good. Because Dr. King used to say, if you call a march and no one shows up, you just won't show walk. And I want to thank those that marched with me 32 years ago in Los Angeles. We marched. And then many years later, with George Floyd and others, we still march. And I'm going to keep marching. I'm going to keep agitating. And I'm going to keep going. Until we don't have to do it anymore. Getting known you a long time, Mariah, Chris, and your kids. And I promise you this, the only thing that I really live for is I get up with this dream that every bigot, every racist, everyone in this country that hates will say, damn, he's up here. Hey, well, I tell you, our family How many slaves? I know I did.
Yeah, that's the one inside the house. Inside.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back President and Founder, Reverend Al Sharpton.
All right. I ran over to the women's council, but I wanted to be back to do this because it's important to hear from people throughout the country and may run to lead the country. And we need to know and hear for ourselves. Before I bring on our next person who we're honored to have, when he came in, he brought me back a couple of weeks ago. And as you know, Reverend Jesse Jackson was my mentor the last 4 or 5 conventions. He was here till he was too ill to be and talk about how he had trained us. And he named our headquarters, House of Justice. And I thought about the one part that was missing in his services was that there was a man that stood with him when most of the establishment in New York would not stand. And he's a man that helped to raise and nurture
me would be a name without him. And I'm glad he's here at the convention and he helped me possible. Give a hand, Bishop Herbert Darch. I was conveyed to all these folks that love Jesse that we didn't see them until but Reverend Dorsey was there in Brooklyn. In fact, they had the meetings in the house of the church, but folk in Harlem didn't know Jesse in '84. I'm telling you what I know. Karen Dorsey will tell you that I'm telling the truth. I want to acknowledge him and say publicly, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. Our next guest, I never have seen anyone stand up stronger around the questions of deportation and stand up around vice than this government. And gave not only respect to Reverend Jackson, but respect to the whole civil rights movement. And I wanted to have this conversation with him. I'm so glad he facilitated being with us. He is the governor of the state of Illinois. And I don't have to read all the background. You know, if I know the fact. I saw a guy when I was at OAN, he said, I saw you with JB. I thought JB was James Brown. Now it's JB Pritzker. JB Pritzker. Look like you brought some fans. My new name, James Brown Pritzker. Let me start by asking you, you set a tone when they were doing the deportation iceberg that I think resonated around the country. And give us what led you to taking such a defiant tone when it was not at that time politically polled that it would go either way. What were you thinking? Why did you do it?
Well, Reverend, it wasn't just about deportation, although that's what you heard when I stood up to him. But I want you to know that I've been standing up to him since I got elected during his first term. And I must tell you, this is somebody you cannot trust. He lies consistently over and over and over. So I knew when he got reelected that it was going to be bad. It was bad the first term, but you could see he was heading into the second term to really take away people's rights. And the first thing he did was go after, well, ICE, CBP invading my city. Before people saw it in Minneapolis, they did it in Chicago. We had people shot and killed by ICE and CBP. They were tackling black and brown people, U.S. citizens, and detaining people and taking them in. It wasn't really about deportation. It wasn't really about immigration. It's this whole administration's view about people of color. Evidence of that, I might add, is just look at his cabinet. He has one black person in the entire cabinet of the United States. 4 total out of 22 are people of color. One black person. I have to tell you, I knew early on, and I can tell you one other thing about it. In 2020, I'll just tell you this quick story. In 2020, I got elected in 2018, took office in 2019. I didn't talk to him for the first year, not because I didn't, have opportunities or didn't want to. It was just, there wasn't anything that I needed to pick up the phone call about. By the way, every speech I gave when I ran for office was everything we care about is under siege by a racist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic president in Washington, D.C. So I don't think he must like me from the beginning. But in 2020, I called him up at the beginning of COVID, very beginning of COVID, and I said, Mr. President, we need your help. We need 2 million N95 masks, and we need 4,000 ventilators. And we need it right away because I had people already in the hospital and dying before many other states. And he said, okay, we'll do that, but you've got to go on the Sunday shows and tell everybody that I did this for you and how much you like it. This is a national emergency. People are dying. And the president is essentially extorting. So I said, well, actually, he put Peter Navarro. Went to prison, came back. He's in the administration. Some other shit. We'll get to that later. Anyway, Peter Navarro got on the phone and I said, hey, how fast can you get us this stuff? And he said, we can do it in a Trump time. And of course, I was trying to get it, so I didn't want to be insulting them. So I said, well, that sounds very fast. How fast is that? He said, we can get it to you by Sunday, so about 4 days. I said, that's terrific, that's great. What they sent was nothing of what I asked for. They sent me broken BiPAP machines, not ventilators. They sent me surgical masks, not N95 masks. There's a big difference. And so, you know, I went on those Sunday shows, and I didn't say nice things about the president, if you can imagine. And look, the man has been a thorn in the side of working families across the United States, the most vulnerable people in the United States. And I'm just not going to let him do it to the people of Illinois. I said, when he took office again, I said, you come through my people, you come through me. So I'm trying to stand up against him and for the people of Illinois every single day.
Tell us what led you, you've been successful in business, what led you into public service?
Thank you for asking that, because I think people overlook the fact that I actually came from a family of people who serve public interest. Let me start with, my family were refugees a few generations ago. And I've always felt like, in every generation, my family has felt like we owe something to this country. My grandfather served in the Navy. My father also crypto analyst in the Navy. My uncle, my brother-in-law, my cousin, we have a lot of people who served in the military. My sister was the Commerce Secretary for Barack Obama, and I'm governor of the state of Illinois. That impetus to be engaged in public service. I was also the chairman of the Human Rights Commission before I became governor. The impetus to be engaged in public service really comes from a belief in this country, a patriotism that I know the Republicans say Democrats aren't patriotic. We're the most patriotic. We believe in this country more than they do. They're tearing down the laws. They're operating in unconstitutional fashion. They elected somebody who is ruining our democracy. And so I think it's now more than ever, it's on all of us. It's on all of us to stand up for the future of our country, doing some public service. At a minimum, everybody has to go vote in this coming year.
You've said that affordability and economic empowerment go hand in hand. Tell us about your medical debt relief initiative and what it means for families.
So I think many of you know people, or you yourselves are suffering from some debt that you took on because you had a medical emergency, something you didn't expect. Maybe you were in a car accident or some other thing overtook you, a disease of some sort, right? And then when you're finally better, you're left with an enormous medical bill. And we have millions of people in the state of Illinois with medical debt that they can't pay and maybe never will pay. Probably will never pay. So we actually, starting with Cook County, the first county, Cook County, Illinois, the first county in the country to implement medical debt program. And then we took it statewide. And now we've eliminated $2 billion of people's medical debt. For 1 million people in the state of Illinois. And you don't have to do anything to get it. You just get a letter in the mail. We do it without you asking. We just go and we buy the debt from the hospitals, from the collection agencies. We can often get it for 1 penny on the dollar. So we can get this done, and every state ought to do it. We were one of the very, very first states, we were the first county in the country to do it, and it really has made a difference. Think about how that weighs on your credit report and on your credit rating when you go to, rent an apartment or anything else in life, and you need credit. And there you've got something sitting there. It wasn't your fault. It's the fault of a healthcare system that doesn't give people a doctor. It gives them healthcare that they can afford.
While you're on your programs, because I think this is stuff delegates from the country can bring back to their government, and we have several governments here, but tell me about your build program. Your administration reported that Black families are 8 times more likely to lose their homes, and your build initiative has focused on new construction, but buildings take years, so beyond cutting red tape for developers, what's your plan to provide direct and immediate help for Black families being priced out or living in unsafe conditions?
So I want to say there are 3 important pieces of, if you want to address the housing crisis in this country, there are 3 important pieces that have to be addressed. They used to be we only talk about 2 of them, but we got to talk about all 3, and here's what they are. I think we all know that there are far too many unhoused people in this country. And we actually put an initiative together, Home Illinois, that is tackling this problem statewide. I mean, it's an initiative that we've got city by city by city. People are adopting the program that we put forward. And we put $250 million into that program to make sure that we're providing people with flexible housing or with additional housing so that they can move into something more permanent or into permanent housing. So that's dealing with the unhoused. That's 1/3 of the problem, or one piece of the problem. The second piece of the problem is what everybody calls affordable housing. And that, of course, is housing that the federal government has been the most involved in for so many years. That's providing housing for people who have very low income or moderate incomes. And that's something the federal government hasn't been doing a great job of, but at least the federal government has been involved in it. Today, 0 from the Trump administration on affordable housing, 0. So that's created a crisis. Now, I'm going to add the third problem on top of it, which is what I'll call middle housing. As you know, people who make $75,000 to $175,000 a year can't afford to buy a home anymore. That used to be where you could afford to buy it. You can't anymore. It's unaffordable. And we have to address that because it's now the case that first-time home buyers, average age, 40 years old. Now, most of us have kids when we're 30s or 20s. And you want to be able to buy a house at some point early enough so you can raise your family in a house. If you earn enough, like 75 or 100, you ought to be able to do that. People can't do it anymore. So we've got to address that problem too. So the build initiative has components of all 3 of that. But the biggest thing is we've got redlining that occurred many years ago that's still in existence in so many towns and counties. We've got to overcome those. Those are local restrictions on people building or acquiring a home. We've got to get rid of those. We've got to make it so that you can, an accessory dwelling unit, maybe you've got on your property an additional building that could be rental housing for somebody, but that community isn't allowing it. Why? Because they don't want around this, the wrong people to rent. And we've got to do away with those restrictions and those barriers. So that's an example of what we're trying to do in the state of Illinois. We also, you mentioned it, and you were dismissing it, but I got to say, there are a lot of people in this audience here today who think about, they've got a job, they that maybe got enough money to make an investment, they'd like to invest in maybe a fourplex or a duplex. They'd like to rent it out. It's often the case that there are so many restrictions in a community that you can't even rent out a duplex or a fourplex in a community that you live in. And maybe it's a property you live in one of the fourplex. We've got to do away with those restrictions. We need 225,000 new homes in the state of Illinois by 2030. 225,000. We can do probably half of that just by alleviating some of the restrictions. And the other half, in part, by incentivizing small developers. I'm not talking about the big names that you've heard, but just small developers in their own communities trying to do something that adds to housing. We could take care of most of the problem if we just get rid of the barriers to red tape.
Let me ask you about your partnership with your Lieutenant Governor who just won the Democratic nomination. That alliance, you work together. Obviously, she's your Lieutenant Governor. You work on some of these issues that we talked about, clean air, and mortgage debt reduction. Tell me why you took the political risk of supporting and really pushing Stratton, who could possibly become the sixth, woman of color to come out in this country as a member of the U.S. Senate.
I'm going to correct you just on one thing. It's hard to do that sitting on stage. I'm going to add to what you said, which is not only was you the sixth Black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. By the way, our state was the first to elect a first Black woman to the United States Senate. Carol Rosenberg. And now we've become the second Black woman to elect, the first state to elect a second Black woman to the United States. The first state and two people of color, Tammy Duckworth, who's Asian American, and he's our other senator. So we're going to have two incredible senators. So that was not your question.
I stand corrected.
That's a political. I just took a big political risk. I will tell you, first of all, she is the absolute best person for the job. That's a period end sentence. I have worked with this woman now for 9 years. She was my chosen running mate in 2017, and she's amazing. I never wanted to speak after her at an event because she's so good, and she's so smart and accomplished. And we got to work together for these last 7 years, her as Lieutenant Governor, me as governor. And when she decided she wanted to run for the United States Senate, there is no question in my mind that she would be the best person for the job. She has done so much. An example, she put forward a birth equity initiative in our state to address the fact that 3 times as many Black women die from pregnancy-related conditions than white women. 3 times as many, and that's true across the country. We needed to address it in the state of Illinois. She put that program together. She fought for it, and we are actually, I think, this coming week, breaking ground on the first maternal center, a birthing center on the south side of Chicago. And even more important than that, she initiated this program to invite more and more doulas and midwives who are Black to get licensed and to be engaged in the process of birthing. So important that we have culturally sensitive, culturally knowledgeable medical leaders who are doing this kind of work. And so she's responsible for that. That's just one of many initiatives of hers. She runs our Justice, Equity, and Inclusion endeavor for the state, which part of what she does is when we legalize cannabis in Illinois, we set aside a whole bunch of that money to address inequities that have plagued the Black community for so many years. We call it our free program. She runs that, oversees that program. It has put probably now over $100 billion into Black communities across the state of Illinois. So I'm very proud of Juliana. She's going to make you all proud too.
Since we are talking about politics, the Democratic Party has the possibility of winning the midterm as far as the House of Representatives. As a shot at the U.S. Senate, what is your advice to the party as they now are challenging a narrow majority of the Republicans? What should they be doing more of, and what are they not doing enough of in your opinion?
I think there are at least three major topics here for the midterms, but I want to be clear about something right up front. Now you hear people talking about fighting for democracy, which is so vitally important. We won't have a future for this country if we do not fight to preserve our democracy. So that's just a predicate to everything else. But you don't win elections talking to the public about democracy. There are obviously many of us who care deeply and understand what's going on and how they're undermining Donald Trump. The Republicans are undermining democracy. We need to be out there and doing everything we can to fight for. But if you knock on 100 doors, and I've knocked on a lot of doors in my life, you knock on 100 doors and you talk to voters at the door, and you say, what's the most important issue to you? 5 out of 100 will tell you democracy. They understand that it's an important predicate to everything, but what people are thinking about at the doors is, I can't pay my electric, I can't pay my rent, I can't afford to send my kid to community college or to college, I can't afford to retire. And these are all things that are affecting people's lives right now. So we need to be talking about that. And I know everybody uses this word affordability, but we need to talk about it in very plain language. It needs to be about lowering costs to people. And you know the best way to make things more affordable? Raise people's wages. And we ought to be, all of us, we should run in 2024, people who are running in 2024, I'm running for re-election as governor in 2026, I can tell you, we need to raise the minimum wage in this country. $7.25 an hour, $14,000 a year on a full-time job. One person can't survive on that. 2 jobs, 2 full-time jobs at $7.25, one person could barely survive on that. You can't raise a family, you can't help your broader family, you can't afford anything at $7.25. Why is our party not loud, I mean really loud, about raising the minimum wage? Juliana Stratton ran for her nomination to the United States Senate in part on raising the minimum wage to $25. We need to hear about raising the minimum wage over and over and over. If you ask every Republican in Congress, all of them who would be, if you ask every one of them, they will say they oppose raising the minimum wage. And about half of them will say they don't think we should have any minimum wage at all. And yet 80% of Americans want to see the minimum wage hike. We should be for raising the minimum wage in the United States. That's one of many issues. The second I'll just give you is, democracy, underlying all, but the really important issue is they're taking away our voting rights. They're taking away your voting rights. And we have got to fight like hell to preserve those rights. So many people lost their lives doing it. Jesse Jackson, so proud to be from the state that Jesse Jackson called home. And I can tell you that we needed him now more than ever. The loss of Jesse Jackson is, frankly, it's almost hard to believe we're living in a world. My whole life, Jesse Jackson has been a beacon of fighting for voting rights and civil rights. And I must say, it is at this moment when all of us need to be civil rights activists. All of us. If we don't have a fair election in November, we won't have any more elections. Everybody has to show up, and you have to show up with purpose. And I don't care if Donald Trump, he's going to try to call out ICE and CBP and scare people away from the polls. Everybody is going to make it seem like you shouldn't vote. We need to go with purpose and push them out of the way, and tell them to get out of the way, and go in and vote. And all of us as governors need to protect your right to vote.
As you talk about that, we have legislation that has led to redistricting around the country, which limits people of color in a very dramatic way in terms of representation. And the Supreme Court is sitting on holding its decision on Section 2 of whether to take race out of the Voting Rights Act. So in many ways, President Kennedy's grandson was here yesterday. In many ways, Kennedy and Johnson established Civil Rights Act 64, Voting Rights Act 65. Then in front of our face, in clear view, trying to upend everything that came out of the civil rights movement and led to not only having blacks and browns, but women and others. Do you think the party ought to be really breaking that down? Because this affects rural voters. Another son of your state, Barack Obama, passed the Affordable Care Act. That affected more people in red states, and they're more farmers.
And their representatives are trying to take it away.
Do you think these are the kinds of things that the national party ought to be more clearly bringing out and not letting? My fear is that they're letting Trump set the agenda and we'll react to what he's talking about rather than acting on what people are concerned.
So glad you said that, because I mean, yeah, you know, you're right. So much of what's been happening is really a reaction to the everyday beating everybody over the head that Donald Trump has been doing every day. I'm sure you're feeling it. I remember 6 months into Joe Biden's term, I thought, it's so quiet. Remember, it was so loud every day. Now we're back in this mode again. Yes, it's a lot of reaction. We need to be proactive. Here's the one thing that we should take away and learn from what Donald Trump has done. He came into office with an agenda, and he essentially has invoked and got passed almost all of his agenda in a year. We need to have our agenda, and we need to make sure we pass it in the first year of the Democratic administration. And it needs to be bold. And it needs to include the restoration of voting rights. I want to say proudly that my state has elected more black congressmen and women than any other state in the country. And it should be that we're bragging about a whole bunch of states competing for that. But when they take away voting rights, it makes it harder and harder and harder. But I'm telling you, in my state, we expanded voting rights. We already did that by state law. We made it easier for people to vote. We made it easier for you to vote by mail. You can now check a box when you vote and say, I want to vote by mail every time, and then you have the opportunity to get a ballot in the mail every single time, if that's what makes it easier for you to vote. We have drop boxes. We have tried to make it available to everybody. Voting is perhaps the most important thing that we've got to expand the rights of. But the agenda, I'll call it Agenda 48, because the 48th president of the United States is going to be a Democrat. He's got to have an agenda that's bold and gets passed.
The agenda is going to lead to a Democrat, you say, in the White House in 28. Are you going to be that Democrat?
That's a good question.
I feel like I'm on Price is Right. People are yelling out the answer.
Be bold.
Be bold. First of all, I'm running for re-election as governor right now.
Yeah, that's
Everybody from Illinois, can they count on your vote? All right, I love it. So let me tell you, vitally important to me. I've been involved in every presidential election, one fashion or another, probably since, in fact, I know, since I was an adult. I've been involved in some fashion. And I'm going to be more involved than ever before in 2028 because we can't lose that. Have you looked at it, first of all? I mean, we can all look at the bar has been set real low by the guy in office today. The most corrupt president in my lifetime. That's saying something because I was alive during Richard Nixon. So we have a pretty good bench. In fact, you've invited so many of them to come right here and on the stage with one of you. So that's my answer. My answer is, I don't know what I'll be doing after. I hope I win re-election after, but I can tell you this, I'm going to fight like hell to elect a Democrat.
So that you got ruling now. Whatever I decide to do, I start, I really think I start with what's going to be best for the people of the state of Illinois. That really is my number one. It's my starting point for everything, because I want to make sure that we're advancing the cause of particularly the most vulnerable working families in Illinois, the middle class in Illinois. That's who we are as Democrats. That's who I am as a Democrat. I mean, we're the party of the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act. We're the party of Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. We need to be fighting to preserve those things, but it was really all about centering on the people who needed us, and people in my state need help.
Yeah. All right, baby.
Whoever is the candidate for the Democratic Party, including you, they will have to face the aftermath of Donald Trump. How do candidate, whoever, deal with an opponent who probably would be one of his sympathies, either Rubio or Vance? How do we show a vision for the country rather than just going back and forth with Trump and his citizens?
Well, Trump isn't going to be on the ballot in 2020. I know he'd like to be, but he's not going to be on the ballot in 2028. He is not. So that is not who we're running against in 2028. I don't want you to overlook, though, that in 2026 we are battling Donald Trump. And we ought to be fighting him every single day, because every day he's in office, he's taking something away. And every day you let an authoritarian have their way is another day that we are losing power. The people of the United States. So, look, the way you deal with it is start with what is going to lift up the most vulnerable people in our country. What's going to lift up those who've been left out of the line? What's going to lift up working families across the United States? We are focused and centered on that. That's who we are as Democrats. That is how we win. Talking about the issues, not, as you said, throwing good bags or calling names, but rather, what is the agenda going forward? How do we protect people's rights and live them up so people are earning more money, so people can pay their bills? And by the way, one last thing about this paying bills. We got to not only make sure that people are earning enough to pay their bills, but people can't afford to just take a few days off in it. We implemented paid leave. People deserve to have the opportunity to take time off and maybe go on vacation. You don't have to go to Timbuktu, but you might be able to get in your car. Oh, these days you can't afford to do that because Trump took us into a war. But you ought to be able to get in your car and drive somewhere just to make a couple of days with your family. People can't afford to do that anymore. So that has got to be part also of the agenda about fighting for livability.
All right, let's give a hand. Governor of Illinois, JB. want to, before we go into our legacy panel, I want to have some remarks. A man that is no stranger to National Action Network. He's a familiar voice. He was served with distinction in the House of Representatives. A lot of you know him for his sharp insight and commitment to telling the truth on television. But now he's stepping back into the arena to run for Congress. He is a leader who understands that justice is not a policy issue, but a human one. He stood with us, he's spoken for us, he remains a dedicated ally to equity. And please join me in welcoming a true friend and colleague to address us for a few minutes, Brother David Johnson. Come on.
Brett, thank you. One correction, I'm not running for Congress. I want to be back in that. Thousands of hours on TV, I promise you, the moment you're at the table with the bread, you know you got to bring your A game. Because you're sitting with history, you're sitting with the Titan. Yeah, I appreciate your friendship. Thank you very much. Folks, I'm running for governor, but this is a moment bigger than politics for all of us as a nation. And we know that. We know that. We are a nation in crisis today. We are a nation in crisis. We are a nation divided. And folks, we are a nation that is broken. Broken. We are broken, whether your foundational beliefs are rooted in faith, whatever faith that might be. The basics, love, joy, dignity, respect, charity. Whether you believe in what Thomas Jefferson declared as the simple natural rights of man. We know that we are extinguishing this great American experiment and we are in crisis. We are broken. The difference in this crisis, though, from crisis past, is that this is a crisis of our choosing. We are in crisis because our nation's leaders are leading us into crisis. Our governor of the state of Florida is creating crisis. This is a moment much bigger than our politics. It's a moment where we have to determine who we are. We know that on any given day, we are a nation either at war or on the precipice of war somewhere around the globe. We know that we face an economic crisis that has stolen upward mobility from too many Americans and has extinguished hope from too many people. We know we're a nation exhausted by culture wars, once again making our own fellow Americans to be marginalized and discriminated against based on the color of their skin, where they were born, who they love, or who they worship. And we are a nation careening towards outright corruption. Outright corruption. We are a broken nation, but we are a nation ready for change. We are a nation ready for change. We are a nation ready for the next chapter, and we are a nation ready for the next coalition. A coalition that can do far more than just win elections, but can win hearts and minds. Can win hearts and minds. Because we know our history. We know our history. The nation was founded on a very fragile ideal of extending liberty and extending freedom. And though we got so much wrong, though we had many dark chapters, that arc of the moral universe continued to be pushed towards justice, towards equality. And sure, it took almost 200 years before we saw some of that justice implemented in legislation through the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, legislation addressing gender discrimination and gender inequality. But we saw the progress. We saw the progress through the hard work, the dedication, the raw martyrdom of people, through voices of moral leadership. We saw a change in this country. We also know that in the last 70 years, we're a nation that chose to make responsible social investments in access to home ownership, upward mobility, affordable housing, investments in access to health care, to education, clean air and clean water for all communities, investments in work, wages, and wealth for everybody across the country. We have made those investments in the last 70 years. But whether it has been that fight towards justice and equality, or the investments we made in creating upward mobility for millions of Americans, all of that is in peril right now. All of that is in jeopardy right now. That is what's under attack right now. That is why we are in crisis, and this is that moment. I am running for governor of the state of Florida, and I'm running on 3 simple values. What I can tell you is when I was in Congress 10 or 15 years ago, I was a Republican. I was a Republican. Right, I'm sorry for those years, folks. But listen, change is part of my story. I have found mine. I don't have a problem in politics with people who change, it's people who won't change. Listen, this is the whole point of this experiment. The whole point of our politics was to marginalize and bring people over. Yes, change is part of my story. I found my home because there are 3 values that I've always tried to hold to. I'm the son of a minister, whether it is rooted in your faith or your politics, or as I mentioned, Jefferson's natural rights and man. I think there are 3 values that I have found in the traditions of the Democratic Party that make me today a proud Democrat. I love the Democrat. Rooted in the traditions from FDR to JFK to Barack Obama and so many others. Those values are very simple. The economy should work for everybody. Government can do its part to improve our lives, and absolutely everybody's rights should be protected and dignity celebrated. Your dignity celebrated, folks, regardless of the color of your skin, where you were born, who you love, and who you worship. Those are our values. The economy should work, government can improve our lives, and everyone's rights should be protected. This is from our values then flow policies. We become a party, we become leaders who are able to deliver on affordable housing, on access to affordable quality health care, on a celebration of public education, investments in the environment. But yes, that 3rd value, a place where everyone's rights are protected and their dignity celebrated, means a nation in the state of Florida, where everybody's suffrage and franchise is protected, where a woman has decisions about her own body. And yes, it also means that we end the culture wars. We end the culture wars. We fight back. We let teachers teach. We bring back the history, all of the history, not just the parts of politicians want to teach us. We celebrate the dignity of everybody, and we celebrate and recognize our history. Listen, every child in the state of Florida tonight should know about the Rosewood Massacre. They should know about the Groveland War. They should know about Harry T. Moore, who was murdered on Christmas Day because he had the audacity to register voters of color on the state coast of Florida. It doesn't shame us to know our history. It strengthens us. And friends, we will never recognize and overcome the darker chapters of our present if we don't learn and understand the darker chapters of our past. So yes, along with values, we can fight for an economy that works for everyone, a government that improves our lives in housing, healthcare, education, and yes, a place where everyone's rights are protected and their dignity is celebrated. Here's the good news. I've done over 200 events in the state of Florida. I've been running for a year. Folks, if the election were to not be winning, we win this race. But that's not the good news. The good news is what I've discovered in over 200 town halls, from the Alabama border to Key West and everywhere else. You know what's happening in the country right now in the state of Florida? The resiliency of our people is emerging. It is emerging again. Because understand, the victories that we talk about were fought for. Before we saw the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, we became a nation that chose to extend rights and equality to more people. We are in a moment where we are choosing the next chapter. We are choosing the next direction. And so yes, in November, this nation is going to choose to put Democratic leaders in place, but more importantly than Democratic leaders that subscribe and believe in the values that I mentioned. We're seeing it in our special election races, and we're going to see it in November. We are a nation now choosing in the face of crisis, the right side of history. There's something bigger than policy in this moment, folks. My wife and I, when we got into this race,
they no fine pass you. Oh na na, they fit to bad, but they no bad pass you. Bad pass you. They fit to carry, they no carry pass you. Carry pass you. They fit to bad.